The world never hears the real stories of the rich. Their moves don't make headlines, their strategies don't trend, and their secrets never leak until it's already too late. But recently, something strange started happening behind those glass walls and private jets. Billionaires everywhere, quietly, silently, began shifting their money into three assets almost nobody talks about. Not gold, not Bitcoin, not the usual things the public rushes toward when they sense trouble. These were different, unusual, so hidden in plain sight that even the most obsessed market watchers missed the signs. It began with a few unusual purchases, mysterious transactions, private auctions closed to the public, sudden acquisitions that made no sense on the surface, and yet the movement kept growing. One billionaire after another began following the same invisible trail, as if responding to a warning the rest of the world hadn't heard. Most people have no idea these assets exist. 99% would walk right past them without a second glance. But the wealthiest people on the planet, they see something inside them, something valuable, something powerful, something that is about to matter more than gold, crypto, or real estate ever has. And that's where the mystery begins, because once you understand why they're buying these strange assets, you start to realize the world is changing in ways nobody is prepared for. They always move before the rest of the world even realizes there was something to move toward. That's the thing about billionaires. By the time ordinary people start searching for answers, they've already positioned themselves miles ahead, as if they were reading a script the rest of us haven't seen. It's not luck, it's not chance, it's the machinery behind them, the quiet network of analysts, ex-intelligence officers, private researchers, and global data feeds that operate far from the noise of the public markets. While most people rely on the news, billionaires rely on information that never reaches the news. They get early warnings, signals about shifts in currency flows, geopolitical pressure points, emerging technologies, debt cycles, and economic storms forming on the horizon. To them, the world is like a massive chessboard, and they can see 5 moves ahead because they're watching patterns no one else is even aware exist. And when they notice something, some tremor deep inside the global system, you'll see it instantly in how they behave. They begin reallocating money quietly, slowly, almost methodically, not in panic, in preparation. They don't wait for the crisis to hit. They act before anyone else even feels the wind change. That's exactly what's happening right now. They've sensed a shift coming, something big enough to reshape the financial landscape. And these 3 strange, obscure assets, they're not buying them by accident. They're buying them because they believe the next chapter of the world economy is already being written, and they refuse to be caught on the wrong side of it. They've been watching the world tilt, slowly but undeniably towards something unstable. Not one single event, but a collection of pressure points building at the same time, like dark clouds gathering from every direction. Rising global debt that can no longer be ignored, nations quietly preparing for currency conflicts, political tensions stretching thin across continents, technology disrupting jobs faster than societies can adjust. Every indicator flashing the same silent warning: the system is not as solid as it looks.
And billionaires feel these tremors earlier than anyone. They see them in the way banks shift capital overnight, in the way governments adjust policies behind closed doors, in the way supply chains subtly reroute as if they're bracing for impact. To them, the world doesn't look calm. It looks like a storm forming just beyond the horizon. That's why these hidden assets matter. They're not glamorous. They're not talked about on TV. They don't fit into the usual categories people obsess over. But in times of uncertainty, it's not the loud assets that win. It's the quiet ones, the ones that offer shelter when the winds get violent, the ones that keep their value when everything else shakes. So when billionaires begin gathering these strange assets, it tells a story, not about greed, not about speculation, but about preparation, about bracing for a world that's about to change and securing the kind of power that survives any storm. They're not buying for today, they're buying for the world they know is coming. They've realized something that most people don't notice until it's too late. The old places where money used to hide are no longer safe. The markets move with a kind of nervous energy now, like they're waiting for something to snap. One day stocks surge, the next day they drop for reasons nobody fully understands. Real estate feels heavier, bloated in some places, uncertain in others. Even crypto, once the wild escape route for those seeking freedom from traditional finance, has become unpredictable, swinging violently without warning. To billionaires, this isn't chaos, it's a signal. When all the familiar shelters begin to crack at the same time, they start searching for places untouched by the madness. They look for assets that don't rise and fall with the noise of the crowd. Assets that don't care about interest rate hikes or market corrections or political speeches. Assets that live in their own world, quiet, steady, almost invisible. That's the real hunt. Not for profits, but for insulation, for something uncorrelated, something that doesn't tremble when the rest of the financial system shakes. And that's the trail that led them toward these strange alternatives, not because they're trendy, but because they offer a kind of stability nothing else does. While everyone else argues over stocks and crypto charts, billionaires are quietly slipping through a different door, one that leads to assets most people would never think about. Assets that don't scream for attention, assets that are hidden, rare, and strangely resilient. This is where their money is going, and the real mystery is only just beginning. The first clue appeared in the quiet corners of private auctions, rooms where the bidders never reveal their names, and the items being sold aren't paintings or antiques, but something far more strange. Ultra-rare manuscripts that haven't seen sunlight in centuries. Scientific research archives, bought in entire collections and locked away in temperature-controlled rooms. Patent portfolios and intellectual property vaults purchased not for immediate use, but for the power they might hold in the future. This is the first obscure asset billionaires are quietly collecting: knowledge. Not the kind found in textbooks or online articles, but the kind that shapes industries before they even exist. They treat rare information like treasure, because in their world it might as well be. A forgotten document, a breakthrough technology blueprint, an unclaimed scientific discovery. These things can shift entire economies if owned by the right person. Behind closed doors, private brokers move these knowledge vaults from one wealthy collector to another. Some purchases happen in basements of old libraries. Others take place in research institutions where stacks of intellectual property are sold off to raise funding. Billionaires sweep in quietly, buying up what most people overlook. They understand something simple but powerful. When the world becomes chaotic, knowledge doesn't depreciate, it appreciates. It becomes leverage, it becomes a shield, and sometimes a weapon. While others fight over stocks and digital coins, the rich are securing the foundations of future industries, one rare idea at a time. They're not buying dusty paper, they're buying what that paper could become. To them, information isn't just information, it's fuel. It's the one resource that never loses value because the world keeps moving toward it, depending on it, expanding around it. Gold can fall, stocks can collapse, entire currencies can vanish, but a breakthrough idea, a proprietary technology, a rare piece of intellectual property, that can redefine an entire market overnight. Billionaires know this. That's why these knowledge vaults matter so much. In their eyes, rare manuscripts aren't historical artifacts, they're blueprints for future power.
Old scientific notes aren't dusty scribbles, they're seeds of innovation waiting to be revived. Private research archives aren't just files, they're unclaimed advantage. And every piece they buy becomes part of a stash that grows more valuable each time the world advances a little further into uncertainty. Because in a world fueled by data, whoever owns the rarest, most exclusive knowledge holds the high ground. Tech companies will line up for access, governments will negotiate, industries will shift direction because of one forgotten discovery pulled out of storage. And while the public sees nothing, no price charts, no headlines, no hype, the value of these intellectual treasures quietly rises in the shadows. Markets may crash, but knowledge doesn't panic. It doesn't react to fear. It doesn't swing with emotion. It simply waits, gaining worth as the world becomes more dependent on the very information billionaires already hold. This is why they're buying, not for today's profit, but for tomorrow's power. The second asset is even more tangible, yet almost nobody realizes its value: water. Not just bottled water or utility bills, but the actual legal rights to rivers, underground aquifers, and irrigation systems. While most people argue over stocks and market trends, billionaires are quietly securing the one resource civilization cannot survive without. They buy stretches of land not for the crops it can grow, but for the water flowing beneath it. They acquire senior rights to rivers, ensuring they can divert and control supply decades into the future. They invest in water infrastructure, storage and distribution channels, building an invisible empire while the world focuses elsewhere. And the timing couldn't be more critical. Climate change is shrinking glaciers, droughts are expanding, and populations continue to rise. Water is no longer abundant, it is becoming strategic, scarce, and invaluable. Whoever controls it will hold leverage over agriculture, energy, and entire cities. This isn't speculation, it's survival. Billionaires understand something most people ignore. Controlling water isn't just about profit, it's about influence. In the coming decades, access to water will define power structures, and they're already positioning themselves ahead of everyone else. Quietly, deliberately, relentlessly, they are accumulating what will soon be the world's most precious resource. The value of this asset isn't abstract, it's multiplying rapidly. Every year, droughts worsen, rivers dry up, and aquifers deplete faster than anyone anticipated. Cities scramble to secure supplies, farmers fight over irrigation, and governments debate allocation. But billionaires already hold the keys. They own the legal rights that guarantee access no matter what. Think about it. Owning water rights in a region where scarcity is becoming the norm is like owning gold in a world running out of gold. It's strategic, uncorrelated with traditional markets, and almost impossible for ordinary investors to access. Prices rise silently, steadily, as demand grows and supply becomes restricted. Unlike stocks, which can crash overnight, or real estate, which can bubble and burst, water rights are anchored in something real, something humans will never stop needing.
And they don't just sit on these assets, they monetize them in ways most people would never imagine. Leasing rights to cities, selling access to farmers, controlling reservoirs and aqueducts, all legal, all quietly profitable. It's an invisible empire of leverage that expands as the world's water crisis deepens. While the public worries about market headlines, billionaires are building control over the very element that sustains life itself. This is why water has become one of the most explosive, powerful, and indispensable assets of the 21st century. The third asset is the most surprising of all, because it exists in a world most people can barely see: the digital landscape. Not cryptocurrencies, not NFTs, but the infrastructure that underpins the flow of information itself. Billionaires are quietly buying access to AI training data, digital pipelines, API routes, and platforms that control how attention, information, and influence move across the internet. This is digital land,
the new frontier of control. Imagine owning the channels through which billions of people consume information, the datasets that train the next generation of AI, the algorithms that decide what content goes viral. Unlike physical land, this asset doesn't depreciate. It grows more valuable as technology and digital consumption expand. The richer the data, the more indispensable it becomes to companies building artificial intelligence, personalized media, and predictive systems. Billionaires see a future where attention and information flow equate to power, influence, and economic advantage. By securing these digital pipelines early, they're not gambling, they're creating scarcity in a space that will dominate the 21st century. And just like farmland or water rights, it's largely invisible to the general public. Most people have no idea it exists, let alone how to access it. This digital infrastructure isn't just an investment, it's a stake in the very architecture of tomorrow's society. And the smart money is already there, quietly consolidating control before anyone else realizes what's happening. The reason this digital land is becoming the new real estate is simple. Everything in the modern world runs on data. AI companies thirst for more training data sets. Tech giants crave exclusive access to algorithms, and platforms scramble to capture human attention before it drifts elsewhere. Owning these pipelines means owning influence, control, and the ability to shape outcomes in a world increasingly driven by artificial intelligence. Billionaires position themselves early, understanding that these digital channels will be the foundation of power for decades. Unlike traditional assets, their value doesn't depend on economic cycles or interest rates. It grows as society's reliance on digital systems grows. The more dependent the world becomes on AI, automation, and online infrastructure, the more essential these assets become. Imagine a network of connections, pipelines, and exclusive datasets that no one else can touch. Whoever controls these doesn't just invest in technology, they control the flow of knowledge, attention, and decisions. It's invisible, yet immensely powerful. And while the public obsesses over flashy trends like Bitcoin or meme stocks, billionaires quietly solidify their grip on this unseen frontier, ensuring they are decades ahead in a world that increasingly revolves around digital influence. The deeper truth connecting all three assets suddenly becomes clear when you step back. Farmland with water access, water rights themselves, and digital land, they all share a common thread. Each one controls a fundamental pillar of civilization: sustenance, life, and information, food, water, and digital influence. They are scarce, indispensable, and uncorrelated with conventional markets. This is why billionaires move into these spaces long before the general public notices. They are not chasing trends, they are building control over the levers that will shape the future. Whoever holds these assets can survive storms that would destroy ordinary portfolios. They can influence industries, secure resources, and create barriers no one else can cross. It's not about short-term profit, it's about strategic dominance across decades. These assets are hidden in plain sight, yet 99% of people don't understand their significance. To outsiders, they seem obscure, maybe even irrelevant. But in the billionaire mindset, they are the foundation of real power, a silent engine that runs beneath the surface of the economy, ready to reward those who understand it and leave behind those who ignore it. Billionaires think in decades, not quarters. They obsess over scarcity, control, and asymmetry, buying what the majority overlooks. While most people chase short-term gains, they position themselves to dominate resources that will define the next century. They see patterns in chaos, opportunities in scarcity, and value where others see risk. Their mindset is simple yet profound. The world will always need certain things: food, water, information, and those who control them will hold immense power. They calculate, forecast, and act before the market even recognizes the problem. They're patient, strategic, and relentless, building invisible empires that grow quietly while the public debates headlines and trends. Understanding this mindset is key. It's not about luck or guessing. It's about recognizing the inevitabilities of human society and positioning accordingly. Billionaires don't follow the crowd, they anticipate the crowd. And by the time everyone else notices, the game has already been won. Once the public starts noticing these assets, the shift becomes explosive. Prices skyrocket, competition intensifies, and ordinary investors find themselves locked out. By the time the headlines appear, the billionaires have already secured their positions, quietly accumulating decades of advantage while others scramble to catch up. This is the pattern you see again and again. Early movers gain control, latecomers pay a premium, and those who never act are left behind. The market reacts to visibility, not foresight. What seemed obscure yesterday becomes the hottest asset today, but the insiders are long gone, having already captured the lion's share of value. The consequences are profound. Ordinary people chase trends, but the real wealth and influence remain concentrated in the hands of those who understood the game long before anyone else. And that's exactly what's happening with knowledge vaults, water rights, and digital land. They are quietly becoming the new benchmarks of power. The future won't be shaped by gold or Bitcoin. It will be shaped by those who control food, water, and digital infrastructure. Farmland with guaranteed water access, legal water rights, and digital pipelines that govern information flow. These are the true foundations of power in the 21st century. And the shift is already happening, silently, behind closed doors. While most people are distracted by headlines, billionaires are methodically positioning themselves for a world where scarcity, knowledge, and influence matter more than traditional assets. The subtle accumulation, the quiet purchases, the strategic control, they all point to a future that is already being written, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who know where to look. The question isn't whether these assets will matter, it's whether you will recognize their significance before it's too late. Because in this new era, real wealth and power will follow not the obvious, but the hidden, the essential, and the unseen. This is the world the billionaires are preparing for, and it's already underway.